So, hello again, everybody. My name is Rob Godlewski with the Think Small podcast. And today we have the pleasure of meeting with Dennis Kao, who is the CEO of Proactive. And Proactive has an interesting background and end story because you recently exited this business, right, Dennis?
Correct. Exited business about a
Interesting.
month ago.
Okay, wow. So we've got a lot to talk about there. But really, Dennis is the CEO of many companies. He's deeply involved in the AI space, working with MSPs, managed service providers, and also cybersecurity. So, Dennis, thank you so much for your time today. Welcome to the Think Small podcast.
Thank you, Rob, for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, Dennis, this is a really interesting journey, especially just exiting one of the businesses that you founded and owned. Tell me, let's go back a little bit though. Tell me how you got started in this line of work and owning these types of businesses.
Yeah, so my journey started when I was 19 years old. I was in college, and I had some friends that wanted me to help them build some computers. And we're back in the early or late 1990s and early 2000s. Computer gaming was all the rage. So really, I started building computers for the purpose of playing games with my friends and having my friends having good computers to play games that we can hang out together. Just like
As most college students are wont to do, right?
that's right, that's right. But I also worked for an IT company as my summer intern job in the beginning, and the company I worked at was a very big HP. Back in the days where they fixed HP printers and copy machine company, and they also started into dabbling into IT services. So I interned there for the summer as I was entering into college, and then continued to work there during my college years, and or the first year of college, if you will. And
Hmm.
that's how I got myself into the IT business. But around probably a year into working for them, and also building computers for friends that was very lucrative. I did not have to work in a restaurant anymore and wait tables. I decided to come home and tell my parents and say, "Hey, I would like to turn your garage into a computer workshop," and the rest is history.
Wow, wow. So what was Proactive the first business you founded?
So Proactive was a culmination of a couple businesses that was combined together. The very first company was a company named Comp Solution. So it was, the word computer without the back, just comp and then solution all in one word. And
Yeah.
it was just a regular, good old break and fix. You bring your laptop in, we'll fix it for you. We'll build you new computers, and we'll build you new gaming machines, and we'll help you, copy files and, all the fun stuff that you probably, see on TV now these days, back in the 19.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So anything related to a computer for the personal user in the early days of home computing.
correct. Yes. Yeah. So we were very focused on fixing computers. Very similar to Geek Squad today, I guess, if you want to call it that. So
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, interesting.
yeah,
You,
yeah.
you were the Geek Squad before Geek Squad.
Correct. So, but
That's
yeah,
great.
PIM was just a culmination of I invested in very early on. I always have an entrepreneur spirit. I study economics as my degree, and so I always dabble
Okay.
in different businesses. I actually exited one of my first businesses that I also co-founded with somebody when I was 24. So. I
Wow.
exited that business. We had a couple other business that I invested into that was very similar. So we collapsed the entire portfolio and then turned it into proactive information management in 2007.
Okay. So you got a very early start on not only running businesses, but monetizing businesses, right? Putting businesses up for sale and then starting new ones from scratch with the earnings you've earned from the first business.
Yeah, I always invested in myself,
Yeah,
I feel like obviously there's a lot of ways to invest in your money, right? I mean, you want to put your money to
certainly.
work. And I had some bad experience with financial advisors early on in my life.
Interesting. Okay.
And so I decided that, it's just I feel like I have more control that if I kind of invest in myself and continue to invest in myself, I feel like I have more control and I have more say in how I invest that money. And I also feel like if I fail or if I win, it's all under my control, right? I have nobody to blame except for myself. So I enjoy having that accountability, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I certainly can understand where a few, bad experiences could definitely light that entrepreneurial fire in your belly and
Yeah.
um, and keep you going. That's tremendous. I never really had that entrepreneurial spirit, but I applaud people who do. So
Not for the faint at heart, I can tell you that.
yeah, yeah, no kidding. So tell me about founding Proactive and you had a long run with that business, having just exited about 6 months ago. So tell me about how you got that business up, how you ran it. Maybe talk about some ups and downs you saw in that business as you were leading that. And yeah, I think that'd be a great next step.
Yeah, so Proactive as a company, obviously was a culmination of a few different companies I sort of consolidated together that was very alike and just trying to consolidate and bring more focus in 2007. But the origin is, stated really started from 1999. So,
Sure.
arguably you can say we're a 20-year-old company or 19 plus, or we're a 26-year plus company. But either way, we were around for a long time. We certainly went through the cycle, when we made the change in 2007. We weren't obviously, we collapsed a few different companies, so we weren't in the healthiest state. And of course, we all know what happened in 2008. But we were very lucky to get some local government business and federal government business where we were
Mm.
helping them doing some digital transformation from system to system. Back in the days when you're dealing with Windows 98 or Windows 2000 and NT and NetWare, there was a lot of transition into the new Windows 2000 and Windows XP type of sort of solution, right? So, I mean, I can go through the whole journey with you. So I can do all that. So we did a lot of those contracts, which actually helped us out a lot. And the other thing that we did was we really took advantage of the whole high tech and HIPAA that Obama at that time was putting through when he first became president. And he was putting a lot of money into trying to help doctors transform and digitize health records, right, to be more
Sure,
accessible
sure.
and secure and to be more presentable for the patients. So we were very lucky to continue to be propped up into the health the government industry, but then we also very quickly brought in the healthcare industry. So those were the two sort of industry that we were really focused on and really got us through to probably 2012-ish timeframe.
Yeah.
In 2013, we venture on into building data center infrastructures. So we were one of the few companies out there that started hosting sort of, hey, don't buy a server in your business. You have this regulatory requirements, you have these HIPAA requirements. We can actually host
Uh,
the actual server in the cloud for you. And they were like, well, what is that? And so that was kind of like that origin start into our origin, start into the cloud infrastructure.
sure.
But it wasn't until about 2017 and 18 where we got into what is now today known as managed service provider business, or commonly known as MSP, which
Right.
we try to be that IT department, if you will, for small businesses, right? And so we saw tremendous growth in that in the first 2 years. And then from there, I started to ask myself a question, we were facing a lot of headwinds towards getting replaced by customers or my businesses where they may think our price is too high, or they had a person who's leaving the business that we had the relationship with as a point of contact who's no longer there anymore. And then we had to kind of restart,
Uh,
sort of relationship. So, one of this aha moment for me was like, hey, how can we be at the seat at the table when the decision is being made rather than sort of come in to be the execution portion of when the decision has already been made, right? So how do we get
right.
that work position? And I worked with a lot of consultants through the years, right? Business consultants or, ex-CIO who is a fractional CIO.
Sure.
And, they're always sort of in that strategy part of it, designing a meeting and a help meeting, and then they always seem to determine our fate at some point. And so I had this vision of saying, hey, how can we be at a seat at a table rather than be a post seat at a table decision sort of, hired gun, if you will, to come in and clean up a project. And that's when we start separating company and I started investing into more business consulting, business operations type of back
Sure.
office businesses. So at one point, I own a marketing firm, co-own a marketing firm. I
Hmm.
co-own a compliance firm because we're very big into HIPAA and OSHA. So I co-own a compliance firm. I mean, and then eventually got me into other business opportunities, which is not technology related, but it was still very industry focus related. So that's kind of sort of how we kind of grew from there. So.
Okay, so healthcare and government services really kind of pulled you out of that 2008 to 2010 kind of financial downturn. That's great. And you still kind of maintained your presence in those industry verticals, correct?
Yeah, so we left the federal vertical because, I felt like it was a lot of time spent with no sort of action. It's almost like
Okay.
we show up to meetings, plan another meeting. It wasn't like,
Yeah, yeah.
somebody's not there. So we actually took our focus to local government. We felt that local government space was a space that it was not very crowded,
Yeah.
was very relationship driven, and they have the same need and as the federal government, but less and state government, but less red tape, right? They operate more like a small business or mid-sized business environment. So we changed our focus to that, and we did really well in that. In fact, before exited the company, more than 70% of our client has been with us for 15 plus years. And out of those 70% client, three of our longest term client were local government customer that I developed back in 2008,
Okay.
2010. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that because that's something I work with my clients a lot here at Chief Outsiders, and that is focus, right? Um, Getting a small to mid-sized business as they're growing or as they're maturing even to to understand that they can't sell everybody effectively. But you made the strategic decision to, yeah, yes, stay in healthcare, but you kind of pivoted from federal government to local government very intentionally. And talk about how keeping your eye on that industry vertical, led you to the success you have. You just mentioned some very long-term clients in that space. So it seems you were very intentional about your focus, and I think that's something that our audience can really relate to.
Yeah, I mean, I feel and I think that one of the biggest challenge for any small business, especially if you're a founder-led business, right, is revenue growth.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's certainly the oxygen to the body, right, to the blood, right, to the business, right, is revenue growth.
Right.
And I think that, a lot of time people it's okay to pivot, but I think that people pivot outside of what they think that, that they should pivot to too quickly. And rather than just stay focused in the lane and pivot within the lanes, right? It's kind of like, if you're driving down a highway, you have a car accident, in front of you, a roadblock. Sometimes it's not as quick as it would be if you get off the highway rather than just wade it through, or maybe find another lane or do an HOV lane or something, right? And
Right.
I always look at that as part of some of the challenges I see with working with small business owner. And, I'm really lucky that after I exit several businesses, I really got to work with a lot of different small business owner. And currently in our AI company, our focus is working on small business owner. In fact, our claim is we will help by using our AI platform. We monetize your data, turn your data into revenue driving opportunities, right? So the reason, we're so focused, I'm so passionate about that is because I think that is what makes people pivot and continue to change because they're not able to get the revenue growth to come in, the revenue, and they're constantly chasing that revenue. So they're changing their strategy and they're pivoting is fine, but I think overall, when they pivot too far, they start changing their strategy and they don't really look at it deeply enough, right? So I always like to say, I want to be 2 mile deep and half an inch wide in anything I do. And that's really important because it's not so much if we can sell something either. It's the person behind you that needs to support it, or the other people that need to scale with you. They also need that standardization and the 2 mile wide and inch deep type of formula, right? To replicate, to scale, right? So process replication and all that stuff. If you constantly change, then people have changed with you. And I think that's the worst thing about big corporation, change management. That's the hardest thing, right? In any type of rollout. And I feel like you constantly do that to your team member, it gets really difficult, right? So it is a lot of intention and a lot of patience, a lot of sleepless nights. I'm not saying that's easy to do, right? You have to be so sure and so confident that you know you will break this through if you just stay the course. And I think that's the challenge for a lot of business owner, right? They chase shiny object because they feel like, oh, they're pivoting, but what they don't see is that they're actually changing the entire strategy when they're doing it,
Right. Right.
right?
You literally took the words right out of my mouth. Pivoting is different than chasing the squirrel.
Right.
Pivoting is you've maximized your efforts in this specific industry vertical or channel or customer type, and those changes are forcing you to find a new channel. But chasing the squirrel or the shiny ball is is like you said, it's not having a strategy at all or completely changing your strategy. So yeah, I hear you. I work with clients every day on that subject, but kudos to you for knowing that early and having that 2 mile deep, inch wide type of focus. Because it's
And
obviously
it's
served you
difficult.
well.
Well, and I think it's very difficult, right? It's not in human nature, especially when you have so much at risk, right? Typically, small business owner, they eat what they kill, as they say in sales, right? And
That's right.
it's very difficult, right? I always sort of jokingly tell my buddy and stuff like that who wants to get in business, and I say it's like going to a slot machine at a casino. You just have to keep on putting a quarter in until you hear the ding, 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 right? And sometimes, it takes some strategy to figure that out, and you have to be a student of what you're doing, and really just like you got to believe in yourself so much and believe in what you're doing is correct. But I think ultimately it's also not to be afraid to fail, right? Because failure is what gives you momentum to move forward. But I
Well,
think
that's how you learn.
yeah, but I think going back though is I think most entrepreneurs, especially small business, when they pivot, they just don't understand how far they have pivoted off, and I think that's where a lot of consulting come in help, and us and
Right.
people experience like, hey, it's okay to pivot, but you got to put something on there, right? You can't turn, you're not trying to turn your car 360. Maybe you're just turning 90 degrees, but it's okay to pivot.
Correct.
Just make sure you're still staying on the same course and the same strategy, the same vision, and the same mission and the same value, right? And I think that's what's difficult and challenging.
And I compliment you on your focus because you weren't pivoting to 7 or 10 or 15 different new industry verticals. You were pivoting to one very specific one, and you maximized your presence in that.
Yeah, I think, whether it's industry or product line or service line, right, of whatever we bring
That's
in
right.
or whatever we buy, we always have one, core value, right, of like, okay, like sort of a checklist of like, does these things fit in this core value of what we always talk about, right? Which is like, is this a company where we can actually do really good at because we're a data company, right? Our core, all the business I own is all about data and data analytics, right? So, okay, so this company has large amount of data and we can use our ability and our other family of businesses to help them move the impediment out of the data, right? So even though we're in the healthcare business now, for example, it's still dealing with data, right? So we're still staying kind of true to
Sure.
our core of what we do best, even though it's in a different industry, because the fundamental business doesn't change, right? I think maybe there's some nuance, but I always like the 80/20 rules. The 80% of the fundamental business doesn't change, right? You still got service delivery,
Right.
whether it's medical doctor or a retail store or nuclear plant, right? You have customer service delivery or service delivery where you fix or project something. You have
Right.
sales and sales operation, and you have business operation. That's the three fundamental of businesses. And, I think it's knowing what your strength is and what you're good at and find solutions for that industry based on what you're good at rather than go, oh, well, tomorrow, oh, I want to be in a doctor business. Okay, so I'm gonna go get a doctorate degree. You can be in the doctor business by helping them making their system better, by helping them use their data to their advantage, by helping them be more efficient, right?
Right.
Using technology, by helping them with cybersecurity, but doesn't mean that you need to be a doctor. And I think that's a lot of times when a small business owner pivot, they think that they have to do so much things rather than stay true to what they're good at, right? So same thing in local government. We brought what we learned from the federal government down to the local government space and use that to our advantage.
Right. Okay, so you've exited out of Proactive. You merged that business into another existing business, correct?
So we sold Proactive,
Yeah.
but during the sale, we had already a couple other companies that was sort of complementary to their business, but so we
Yeah.
carved it out. And so I'm still operating those businesses, those two
Well,
businesses.
great. Let's talk about those businesses then, and businesses plural. So let's talk about each of those, and what are the what are the growth horizons for you with those businesses?
Yeah, again, staying true to what we do, right, is, we're super good at data and data processing, right? I mean, to me, my whole foundation and value of how I run any business or any company is data, data, data. Whether it's good data or bad data, it's data that we need to learn, understand, and then make intelligent decisions using those data points, right? And
Right.
so the two businesses that we're in, one is to protect data, and also which is data governance, right? So we still continue to do HIPAA and we do GDPR, SOC 2 auditing. The big new
Uh,
thing today are CMMC contractors and flow downs, how to help businesses achieve compliance, right? And also guide them. So we act that for that business, we don't act like a typical managed security certifier is what we call in our industry. We're more like fractional chief risk officers for the companies, right? So
okay.
we sit on a board with them.
Yeah.
We serve on board sometime. We advise them on their risk, right? Whether it's reviewing their insurance policies, how does that interact with your IT? How does that interact with your business operation? How does that interact with your service delivery operation? And it's finding that balance of regulatory requirement and running a business, right? Because if we follow every single rule that the government puts out for regulation, we'll never get anything done. We know, we know that, right? We'll go bankrupt for sure. On the other side, it was a product we developed in when I was in an IT company, MSP under Proactive. We understand that as an MSP, we sit on a lot of data, client data, and we don't use that data effectively. And there's a lot of reasons why we don't use that data effectively. And one of them is a system silo, right? We as a company use probably 5 to 7 tools or different platform to manage our business, whether it's customer, whether it's CRM, whether it's technical tools or whatever it is, and all of them collect some sort of data. But we like the visibility of having that data being cohesive to make
Right.
an intelligent decision, right? So we like to say the truth is somewhere in the middle, and we want to be that single source of truth. So we develop product to help make us more efficient to share data. That was the initial thought process and concept. But very quickly, we understood that, wow, we can monetize this data, right? Like we know that these data are a bottleneck to our sales growth because for a salesperson to be able to go out and be a strategic advisor to the client or help client, they
Right.
really need to have all the data at hand. And we had the tool to able to help them with that. So we pivoted, still staying true to our data core and standardized data stuff, but we pivoted to our messaging to that we want to really help MSPs or professional service business use their data to drive revenue growth, right? So, in which those two companies really do work hand in hand together because we help company drive revenue growth, but at the same time, we also help company protect the downside from data governance and risk, right? So I still own company. I have data that actually do both the top line of the business and the bottom line of the business, which is what I like to call it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Dennis, because I deal with a lot of clients who have, like you said, data in multiple places within their business, right? And some of that data is kept in I'll say somewhat formal spaces,
Right.
either in an ERP system or in an accounting system or in a MRP system. But then I usually have, I'm going to call it relatively old fashioned sales teams that love to keep a lot of data themselves
Right. And
because,
Outlook and OneDrive.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
or even down to an Excel spreadsheet or a post-it note for
Yeah.
honestly. So,
Yeah.
but what's interesting is you're as I'm listening to you, you're actually creating tools that can aggregate that data and make it visible and work for not just an individual salesperson, but the entire sales team. Because the insights taken from salesperson B can be insightful and work for salesperson A. And salesperson B might not want to give up that data because they might think they're, losing hold of their customer. But at the end of the day, you're benefiting from other people's data and your colleagues are benefiting from your data. So it makes a ton of sense. But we have
Yeah,
that change
absolutely, right?
management thing we're both going through, I think.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? And and we very purposely built our platform outside of a system, right? So look, Salesforce,
Okay.
HubSpot, any ticketing system, ERP system, MRP system, right? Out
Sure.
there, great systems, right? And they all do their things great, right? But one thing they don't do well, in my opinion, is sharing data, right? I mean, and I think really, if you think about it, in 2008, when we were going through the evolution of healthcare changes to modernize and digitize, right?
Yeah.
What the government was trying to do is like, hey, you should be able to get your medical data everywhere you go, right? And we haven't achieved that yet, right? Because the thought process was like, you can take your ATM card anywhere in the world today and plug into
That's right.
ATM machine, and you can get how much money you have on your balance, and you can do some things to it, right? I mean, I was recently in our office in Prague, and I need a euro. So I walk up to a machine and I plugged in my ATM card from, you know, some small local bank here, right? And I was able to get euro and then deduct it from my account and so on and so forth, right? And I was able to see
Right.
certain things. So, but the system doesn't really work that way. It doesn't work that well because it's a data issue too, right? They want to protect their data, uh,
Yeah, I
and all
get
that
it.
stuff, right?
HIPAA issues and things
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we sit on top of that the layer and say, okay, we going to be that single source of truth to bring all those data points in. And our company has always dealt with data, right? Whether it's IT data from day to day of moving files to securing the data in the cloud to government GCC high data for DoD, which we were certified into. We were always about data, data, data. So it's about it's about changing and transforming that data to bring you insights to the business, right? Because that truth is in that system may be true for the service sales department, but that same data set in the service department may not be the truth anymore. So how do we bring everything together
That's very true.
or orchestrate it so that it brings the business insight to everybody at their fingertip, right? And it's a very tough challenge because we have to take on, uncontextualized data and contextualize it and learn from it and then put it backstory somewhere and then call it next time, right? And then the data governance becomes a problem. Like, how do we secure that data? Where's that data from? Where did that come from? And that's where our other company comes in and help for the
Wow.
too.
So you're moving forward with two new companies in two kind of similar but somewhat different spaces relative to data, as your core focus is, of course, data.
Right.
It sounds like an exciting future for you. As most of my conversations with small to mid-sized businesses here on the Think Small podcast,
Mhm.
everybody's talking about data and AI and what the next 5 to 10 years looks like. And everybody's kind of agreeing. We are definitely in the next industrial revolution. Dennis, I think you're going to be a very successful player in this space. You obviously have a long, successful track record, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
Yeah, we hope. So a
I
lot of
think you're going to do just fine.
yeah, there's a lot, there's still a lot of growth opportunity, right? And there's a lot of unknown in the industry, right? How is AI going to shape our life? How is that going to
Yeah,
shape the way that we do business every day? And which then kind of cascades down to governance and even my formal business, right? Where they have to support customers. How are they going to support customer? How are they going to
Right.
change how they operate their business? How are they going to change how they provide service to their clients? Or most importantly, what type of conversation are they going to change, right? And I think one of the things that I heard the other night I thought was really interesting is AI is really going to be a revolution and a huge change and huge mind shift for the white collar workers. It's not going to impact the blue collar workers as much at this time. It's going to be more white collar workers, right? Because we have to change
Yeah.
from a execution task driven society of work or pushing paper or manual entry into now having a business conversation in order to excel ahead. And I think that's one of the things that we see very difficult in the conversation with even MSP is they're great IT, they're great technicians, they're great technologists, right? And they're great people. But we all know IT people are not great communicators. I mean, I'm not a very good communicator myself sometimes. And now you're asking them to go in and talk about business intelligence and
Right.
forming your customer's business. Now, your customer has this business need, and you're now talking about transforming it and understanding and executing it, which is
Right.
going to be a really big shift for the entire, I think, not just our industry in IT, but in a lot of small businesses, right? So,
Well, yeah, and again, I think this is a really exciting time. In a lot of my conversations with folks like you, there's less of a concern about the negative impacts of AI and data intelligence. And there's more of almost a hopeful approach about this is really going to create new jobs that we don't even know what those jobs are yet. But rather than looking at what jobs AI might be taking away, a lot of the people I'm talking with on this podcast are hopeful about what jobs it's going to create. And and I think you see that in your line of work.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I've been to a couple of speaking engagement events, and I use this analogy a lot, right? 100 years ago, you have a team of people, artisans, weaving a rug, right? Then all of a sudden the machine came out and 100 people can maybe do one rug in a month. And now a machine came out and you have this one machine that can do 100 rugs in a month, right? And
Right.
only 100 people. And you go, hey, I displaced those people. But those people then turn into, hey, how do I maintain the machine? How do I
That's right.
how
That's
do I do
exactly
this? How do I do
right.
that? Right. So it's going to be a shift in what we do. And I don't know. I feel like that we as a population really have been prepared in a bit, right? Because of COVID. COVID was such an impactful event that we had to shift. And if you look at a lot of people did shift their professional life, right? I mean, a lot of them were bartenders or servers, and they went back to school, and now they're in a different line of business, right? A lot of people say, "Oh
That's
my
right.
God, I don't have a job anymore." But being a car mechanic is thriving, and they don't. I mean, I'm sorry if I offend anybody that's car mechanic because they don't call them car mechanics anymore, car technicians, right? Thriving, right? So they went back to school, and now they're in working in a car dealership, maintaining a car or helping, So I think human will find different ways to adapt, right? But I think that people who are afraid of AI, I don't think they need afraid. I mean, I like to tell people that can you imagine living in a world today without having a cell phone in your pocket, right?
No,
Can you imagine
absolutely
going,
not.
right? Can you imagine going anywhere without having internet?
Yeah,
Can
no
you
way.
imagine buying a TV or coffee machine or any home appliance that does not have the word Wi-Fi built in or an app
Right.
built in, right? I think AI is going to be just like that. It's going to be ubiquitous, right? It's a tool, but I
Yes.
think we'll find ways to make that tool better. The only thing about AI is it does have intelligence that if you don't feed it right information, it will do bad things, right? And create bad stuff, right? So there's higher impact in having mistakes because of that. But I think that's only a matter of time before we solve that as a society, right? So,
I think so. I think what I'm having conversations with CEOs and business leaders now is lean into AI. You're not going to get replaced by AI, but you're going to get replaced by people who know AI.
yeah, yeah. And I
And
think it goes back to
and you got
what,
to validate
yeah,
what's coming out of AI, right? Sometimes it's
correct,
not right.
correct. But I also think for business owners, you lean into AI on how to accentuate your uniqueness.
Exactly.
Don't pivot and change because now you have AI, right? And
Right.
use AI to see how it can effectively help you drive revenue growth and grow revenue, right? Hey, I can only do 10 things at one time before. Oh my God, now I can do 20 things, Man, I used to
Right.
spend hours writing a blog. Now you can go to AI and they can give you a template and maybe it'll drive something, but take the 30 minutes to sit down and read through it to make it your own. Don't just,
Right.
use that, right? But that used to be a three week venture for me. Or oh my God, I gotta get off the dinner table. I gotta do this.
That's
It's
right.
such a drag. Now it's not a drag, right? You know, I I was at a meeting yesterday and I got in a car and I summarized, I talked to ChatGPT, on my car and I said, hey, just got out of a meeting. Here are all the things I learned from this meeting and summarizing all that. So I just summarize, I just talked to it like I'm talking to a recorder, the old-fashioned recorder, right? And
That's
then
right.
at the end, I said, summarize this for me in executive format and to be sent out to the other two people that could not make the meeting. And I did that all in 5 minutes.
Right.
Now, back in the days, in the early 2000s or even 5 years ago, I had to drive back to the office. Okay. If I do make it back to the office without 10 different phone calls and priorities, then I have to sit and go, ooh, what was the meeting about? Pull up your meeting notes, right? And you have to sit down and actually compose something and stuff like that, right? So, and I asked AI, I said, hey, summarize it and read it back to me. Read it back to me. It sounds good. No, I want you to make this change. This is the main point that you did not make. And then I said, okay, well, good, send out. I did four of those in a span of an hour driving home.
Right.
Right. That would have taken me 2 or 3 hours before. So it's those things that you can use to sort of make you better. I think that's the key and make the business better.
Dennis, I think you and I could talk about this subject for hours, but I think this is a great place to leave it here. Again, we appreciate your time. Again, everybody, this was Dennis Kao, in charge of multiple businesses focused on AI and cybersecurity. We wish you all the best in the future. Good luck, and your friends at Think Small are going to be rooting for you.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.